Because if you're talking to someone online, you still need to give them a reason to show up offline. First, identify in your own life what you care to be doing so much that even if someone didn't show up on your date, you'd still do it.
This program contains coarse language and discusses mature themes. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to The Birds and the Bee with me, not Chelsea B. So Chelsea had to do some work, and it is just me, Matt, and Steve Dean talking today. So, Steve, we were talking about online versus offline.
So I was explaining that when it comes to online dating, the most important variables are choosing the right app, making sure that your photos make sense for the people who are right for you, making sure your profile makes sense so that those people know that you're a good faith bet for someone to message and a safe bet for someone to actually meet. And then the last piece, which we haven't touched on, is really how you message someone to ultimately convince them that you're in fact worth meeting up with before they decide that you're either too boring, too annoying, too needy, too whatever, and then unmatch you. Yeah. So I wanted to touch on that, and then I'll also explain, because I have clients who sometimes just come to me saying, I hate online dating, I never want to touch it, I only want to date offline, and I still have to help them. So the offline portion is every bit as important. But I think in order to get us there sometimes for people who are choosing the online route, it's basically, the fun part is it's the same challenge in both cases, online and offline. Because if you're talking to someone online, you still need to give them a reason to show up offline. And so the way I think through this is, first, identify in your own life what you care to be doing so much that even if someone didn't show up on your date, you'd still do it. And so if you have a lineup, let's say, of like 3 or 4 things on a weekend that you really just care to be doing, maybe it's take a hike, it could be take your dog out for a long walk, it could be check out a new exhibition that's happening somewhere, it could be journaling under a tree, having a picnic somewhere, like basically pick the things you want to be doing between a Friday and a Sunday and keep those in mind, plan for it, invite friends to some of those things if you already want to. Then when you're on a dating app, so I'll do the dating app version of this first. In your messaging with someone, if you're able to tell them, hey, I'm planning on doing these 4 or 5 things over the course of a weekend, what does your weekend look like? What you're basically saying is, hey, I'm not just a person who is real and has things, like I populate my life with things that I care to be doing. You're signaling your values, where you're choosing to spend your time and attention. You're signaling that you've already made some commitments to the things you plan to be doing. And you're signaling to this person that they may be invited to those things. What that frees the person up to do is be able to say, oh, wow, like I'm totally not free Friday. I'm already committed, but I like that you're doing that. And maybe another time I'd like to do that with you. For the Saturday thing, I'm actually freed enough Friday night that if I came over Friday night, we could just start Saturday early and then do all of those things on Saturday because they sound great. And then Sunday, I'm still waffling on something, whatever. Like we'll talk about it based on how we mesh. But you've given someone so much more agency to be able to instantly know that they can show up with you and that they're excited to show up with you for those things. And it gives them freedom to also chime back with the things that may be logistical or preferential variables on their end. So they can say, I'm not free for this, but I still want to do it with you later. They can say, that thing on Saturday, like the second of the 3 things you were doing on Saturday, I have no interest in. I'd rather just like go do this other thing. And then I'll meet you back in the evening. Like being flexible in what you have the option to do allows dating to feel so much more natural, because what are you going to do in a relationship with someone? Like dating should be a precursor to a relationship. It should be helping you identify what a relationship with this person might look and feel like. And so in relationship, you would say that to your partner. You would say, hey, what's your weekend looking like? Here's my lineup. Here's the things I'm about to prioritize. Where do you want to fit in? Are there things here that you want to do, that you don't want to do, that you have pre-commitments for? I do that every single week with my partner and across other partners. I check in, and you basically, based on the nature and structure of your relationship, you'll have some nuance around who goes to what and when, who gets what invites. But still, it's the basic principle of you populate the week with the things that you value, you share that, you offer it to another person to join in. And so if you're online and you're sending a message to someone, that typically, what I found, is the best way to unlock not just those additional compatibility variables, because someone sees you literally say, I'm doing these 4 or 5 different things. So they see you putting your vote on 4 or 5 different kinds of things that you enjoy doing. that they can then vote with their feet and join you for. If you send a message like that, it's just so much more effective than a, hey, what's up? Or what's your plan this weekend? If you just ask that, then you're like every other person who's asked, but never given them anything to work with. If you say, what's your plan? And then you give your plan, you've given like 2 orders of magnitude more power to your message, because suddenly someone gets to learn about what's actually happening in your life. And maybe their plans were kind of like hazy. They didn't really know what they wanted, but you mentioned things that they've never even thought of. And they're like, wow, I could be doing that this weekend. That's so cool. You're so cool. Let's go do those things.
Yeah.
And so to take it offline, let's say you never even touched a dating app, I would say the same thing can and should apply. You should still populate your weeks, your weekends, whatever, with the things you most want to be doing. What helps, though, is having some of those things be places where you can meet people that you give a shit about. And so that's part of the challenge of dating, is like, A, what are the environments that I care to be in the first place where I can meet people? And then if I am meeting people, this is where it gets really hard. How do I signal to someone that I'm interested enough that they would indicate to me that they might want to, divert their attention in the future toward me, toward a date, towards something? And it can be scary, like the whole meeting offline, if you don't know when and how you can be of interest or value to another person. You go to a bar and you say, hey, hi, like what's, same as online. Hey, what's up? I don't know anything about you, but like, what are you doing? You seem nice. It can be really awkward if you're going to like a generic catch-all place that's like going onto a Tinder. A standard bar is just like a Tinder. Anyone can show up. You have no idea who's being vetted to show up there, and it's not actually tailored to your personal interests or preferences. But if you have a weekend in which you're doing like volunteering at a local composting community organization, like that's already signaling some degree of values of where you might actually live. If you're doing something tied to like biking or some kind of physical activity you already enjoy, meeting people doing the things you already like doing means that you already have a structural case for compatibility because you're doing the same things already. You don't have to convince someone to change their life up for you because they're already living in the same direction. And it's just a matter of identifying where those directions are and finding, ideally, someone who can synthesize their life with you across those different directions and dimensions. And so the maxed out version of this that I've been working toward, and this is how I met my current partner, is if I were to merge my weirdest interests together, things that are so unique to me already that if I put them together, it becomes like there's basically a handful of people on the planet who might be compatible enough to fit me on all these domains. When I put those together, it does create this kind of gravity well for exactly my kind of person. And so one that I tried was, I said to a friend, I want to start meeting up maybe like weekly to do arts and crafts or writing, some sort of like creating something that feels artistic and generative. And I want to do it every week. And I want to do it while smoking a different strain of weed and seeing what kinds, like how does that affect the art? How does the strain affect what the output is? And I want to do it in a scenario where it could be like a friend's apartment, my apartment, like something where we get to get multiple people together and learn together. And so I combined these different interests in like co-working, collaboration, art, and cannabis. And what ended up happening was that friend could only think of like 1 or 2 people who actually fit the bill for someone who would want that kind of a thing as well. And he ended up making a group chat and putting those people in it. And then the one person who showed up for the first gathering of this sort turned out to be the person who then became my now partner of almost 4.5 years. And I just feel like so much of the responsibility for that connection happening was me being able to say confidently, these are things that are important to me. Like if someone didn't feel comfortable with the fact that I smoke cannabis from time to time, or that I like doing art with friends, then they probably wouldn't fit into my life anyway. And they can just peacefully nope out and never have to deal with me.
Yeah.
But the person who wants that is more than likely to be more compatible.
That's interesting. Yeah, I do find myself that I will do activities to meet people in spaces where my brand of weird is represented. Like if I'm like, oh, okay, I feel like going out to a David Bowie tribute night. It's that has potential to be like a very queer friendly space. 80s dance nights. I love 80s new wave, that sort of thing. To kind of find that brand of weird, especially like as a queer cis male, It's so hard for, like, when I match with someone, I unfortunately have to tell them, like, hey, I'm bisexual, pansexual, and that's the first, like, my personality is more than that, but I have to get to that point as quickly as I can to not upset people, and I'm always having to apologize for people. I think I'm blocked on Hinge because someone said that I was obscene by mentioning that, like, this is just who I am sexually. Sorry, Hinge. And then so yeah, I will find activities either online or offline that kind of speak to my personality in such a way where I don't have to constantly apologize for who I am.
Your photos can do that too, to a certain extent.
That's why I try to keep David Bowie tribute night, David Bowie costume. Yes, they can do that as well.
Hopefully someone would pick up on that. I will say also, just like as a follow-up on, like, let's say you do meet people that you like at various events, like the next big challenge is finding out how you see them again, because maybe you'll see them at that kind of event again, but that's a lot of chance. You have to hope that, they're still in the city. You have to hope that they weren't just tagging along with a friend and this is not in fact something that they go to regularly. You have to hope, like, if you did get their contact info, that you don't just end up in that awkward, like, oh, I now have your number, but maybe I didn't get your Instagram, so I don't actually know other things about your life. I don't know what your partner status looks like. I don't know what your general dating orientation looks like. So we don't get that information offline most of the time, because most of the context in which we meet people, they're not freely divulging all of their romantic compatibility information. That's usually what you save for the dating apps, or save for, like, long-form conversation. And so the challenge becomes, how do you get back on someone's radar? How do you find out what your next point of contact will be? And I think that comes right back to the knowing ahead of time what you plan to do over the course of multiple days the following week, the week after that, and being able to readily talk about that. Because if I meet someone and I don't say that, then what are we left doing? I'll send them this kind of, like, blank text of, like, oh, what's up? What's going, like, it helps so much to be able to say, hey, I met you at that thing. You seem pretty cool. I don't know what other kinds of things you're up to, but here's the stuff that I'm doing over the next 2 weeks. Is there any low-hanging fruit that, like, you would want to join me for, because you're someone I absolutely want to talk to again? And, like, that can be regardless of whether they're single or not. That can just be a friend that you're, inviting to get to know them better. But what I typically recommend there is, like, try to make it so that the things you're doing, when someone votes to join you, it gives you a wider spread of understanding about who they are. So, like, if you're going to a trivia night, and that's, like, the big thing you have on offer, like, you might not learn a lot about this person. Whereas if you're going to, like, a conversation-centric cuddle puddle, like, you might actually learn a lot more about someone, because you can have longer form conversation. If you have a multi-hour hike, you could probably learn a lot about someone over the course of that conversation that happens there. If you're just going to the movies, you might not learn anything. And so I typically recommend having a good spread of events in your life that give you different access points to your and others' intimacies. So I'll rarely just do things that require multiple people. I typically try to vary it up so that some of my things are, quiet journaling under a tree. I could do that alone. I could do that with one person. I could do it with a group. But whoever I'm doing it with, we can potentially get to know each other by virtue of having, like, peaceful moments. Just knowing that you can share a silence with someone can be really important for compatibility. But if I'm going to do something that's outside, I'll also add a couple things that are inside. If I'm going to do something that's a group, I'll add some things that are more solo or partner pair. So having that spread lets someone vote with their feet for the things, like, the intimacies they're prepared to share with you. But that's really different from only inviting someone on a date to a bar or a restaurant, like taking someone out for dinner. Like, that can be so much so quickly for someone who does not know you yet, doesn't know your vibe, doesn't know who you hang with, like, or even, like, what your ultimate intentions are. And it's just so much more difficult to get someone to say yes enthusiastically when you suggest a very unidimensional thing with only one type of intimacy implied. And I think that it's just way better from a standpoint of, like, modern humanity, where we have so many different parts of ourselves that live both online and offline, to invite someone to share with you a variety of those intimacies and let them vote with their feet in which ones they're willing to share and why.
How many of your clients are actually looking for emotional intimacy? Is it, I don't know anyone that is just tuned in right now. They're looking for more instant gratification. And that doesn't always mean sex, but it's a lot of just like, I'm willing to meet someone. I don't know why yet, but it has to be quick, easy, and convenient. I have a schedule. Now a lot of people they have kids too, and they're trying to date as single parents, and I mean, how many people are looking for that kind of in-depth relationship that you seem to be speaking of?
I think most people that I speak to want that. Some people are afraid of that because they don't know what it might entail. Like, I have clients who kind of span the gamut. Like, there's 3 core groups of clients that end up coming my way. One is like divorcees over 50, where they may not have ever touched the online world before and they're a little afraid of it and they don't want to fuck it up. But and also maybe their preferences are kind of varied, because some of them are like, I just got divorced, but like I'm down to get married again. That was just like, I lived a life, I raised a kid with that person, and now I'm just ready to like, I'm 60 years old and single again. So like, what's next? Some of them are saying like, I've already done the kids thing. I never want to do that again. I'm completely done. But I haven't had sex in 10 years in that relationship. And therefore I just want to like explore my body, explore my sexuality, see what that domain and dimension of my life looks like now. Those people might struggle, because if you're looking for sex at 60 and you're not just like living in Florida, then you end up in the situation where you don't want to sound like a hornball, and your market value from a mating standpoint is already fairly low because of age. And that's just like a factor of, human superficiality again. You have to be very tailored at that point. And like, what are you offering to the world? Like, you can go on a kink app potentially. And if you have particular kinks that you can show yourself being really compelling at, then yeah, you can still, no matter the age, become like the thing that someone is seeking. But I guess for other clients, the challenge, it's usually not one of like, I want only something superficial. It's usually like, that's all they know that that's all they're getting in the first place. And so they come to me because they actually want something that's of more substance and driven by more compatibility. And they just have no idea how to find that, because no matter what app they download, it just feels like more of the same.
They know that they can get more of the superficial, but they come to you to help be a person again, like connect with people on a human level.
Like, a lot of my clients have been on over 100 dates. Mm-hmm. Not all of them, but like that is, I'd say maybe 30+% of clients have dated prolifically already. Like, they know how to go on a date, but they don't know how to find someone they want to be in a relationship with. Or every person they've dated from all these apps has never resulted in a relationship that lasts more than 6 months. And so they don't actually know what they're like in a long-term relationship, because they've never had one last that long. And it's usually because they haven't actually found someone compatible enough, because these apps will, once again, they'll find you someone you can fall in love with for 6 months, but then eventually it kind of falls apart because it wasn't founded upon a strong enough foundation. Like, you didn't have the baseline pillars that you need to like feel validated, to trust that this is a good long-term bet, to know that you want the same things more than 6 months from now. Like, it's easy to know what you want tonight. It could just be a moment of like, could be confidence boosting procrastination, in which case you never even have to get off the app. Yeah. Just get a bunch of matches and people that say you're sexy. It could be someone to come hook up with right now. Maybe that's when you go to Pure or to Field or to, there's an ungodly number of sketchy hookup apps you can turn to, very few of which will actually result in someone showing up at your door. But
no, I've been there. Yeah, I know.
And then there's other apps that are just good for getting you a date this week. That's like your Bumble and Hinge. It's basically like, find me someone who seems easy on the eyes that I'm going to not instantly regret meeting, that can at least get through a date and maybe have, like, I have a friend who's gone on 200 dates, mostly from Hinge and Field, but her core metric, like, she basically assumes that if she's already on a date with someone and she's attracted, she'll know within less than 1 minute whether she's attracted enough to want to have sex with them. And she'll know by the end of 30 minutes whether she in fact plans to invite them to have sex with her that evening, basically to come over, have some wine together or whatever, sleep over. And then if she does invite them over, she then knows that there's roughly a 90% chance they will then have sex. And so for her, it's like clockwork. She knows how to like go on a date that will result in sex. But she wants kids. She wants a family. She wants to be a like fully functional, stable adult in a relationship. She's a doctor. Like, so she can basically, like, she's a catch in a sense, but that also means that she has very high standards for like who's going to be long-term compatible. And she's still trying to learn what that actually will look like as she gets to know each person.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges, especially of dating in New York, is that when you're looking for long-term compatibility and it's a city that's full of so many people who are like reinventing themselves or being forced to reinvent themselves because of how incredibly difficult it is to live here, like it's like living in hard mode at all times being in New York, especially if you're not making over 7 figures, right. Because then just everything is cranked up to max volume and frustration and attentional demand. It's just harder, and the opportunity cost of monogamy is really high in New York City, because basically, anytime you're choosing one person or thinking of choosing one person, that person has to be better than the next 500 people who are within the same block of you, as proven by every app on your phone. The next 500 people who are already in your match queue, who have already messaged you, and it's just a matter of you opening the app when it buzzes your phone 50 times a day telling you that someone sent you a message. Like, it's hard to fend off that many people with just you, your measly self, showing up in someone's life for the 15 minutes they were showing up on a date. You know, it's now that maybe a couple minutes to a couple hours you get to spend with someone, maybe a day if you stay over and then stay for breakfast the next morning. You know, it's that versus every possible person already in their life, plus every person they may meet in the coming hours or days, the people they already have dates scheduled with after you. And so like the opportunity cost of settling with one person is every other possible person that you could be exploring, getting to know, and potentially building a more complete life with. And so it's actually really hard. When I was in my 1 square mile town, like if you meet a single person you actually like, you may want to settle immediately, because it's like, wow, there were 0 people on any of these apps. Everyone at the bar I typically can't stand. And so if I meet a single person who I think is in any way compatible, I'm already in. I just want to see like, where can we take this? Please don't go see other people. Let's find out like what we can be together. But in bigger cities, that is just the supply is just so high. And it's constantly replenishing itself. You know, like every single year, there's a new class of how many tens of thousands of people from all the universities minted that people will then be dating. And they're probably dating while they're already in university. And then all the grad schools have like there's new people coming in from all over the world to cities to basically build a life, to find their person. And it's really hard to basically learn enough about someone to know that their life jives with yours, and do so before the next person enters their radar.
It's so hard in New York City. I don't know. It's all of those things. It's the problem of too many choices. It's the problem of also feeling very lonely in this city. It's the fact that New York City is just a revolving door. During the pandemic, it was so hard to like, okay, we're all moving into the digital world. I know that world. It was okay. Maybe this will be an easy way to talk to people because I'm used to this kind of thing. Nobody stayed in New York for more than 5 minutes. Like regardless of lockdown, COVID stuff, past that, beyond that, 2021, 2022, people were still coming and going. And it just seems to be a smaller world now. And the fact that all major cities, people aren't there for that long. I don't even live here full time anymore. I live here part time. I live part time in Chicago. I don't know, Chelsea's in Europe right now. We're just all trying to hustle to like pay our next bills. And it just seems like romance just takes such a back seat to other priorities. I don't know how anyone meets anybody with not many people, because then you have clients that are, they lost touch with romance and intimacy. I don't know how people do it.
Like my general recommendation is just fill your life with the things that make you feel a sense of like drive and purpose, and then make it easy to invite people to join you in those things as best you can.
Yeah, you're very good at coming up with like creative, thoughtful, nuanced approaches to things, because you're not a big advocate of meeting people in bars. I've learned that from you from over the years. So you come up with thoughtful date ideas that aren't alcohol centric, which I think people they know not to do that, but they sometimes get complicit because it's let's meet up for drinks. But you're more than that. You really advocate for event-based first dates. And actually, I took a page from your book a couple of years ago. I invited out a woman on a first date to do like a photo walk because she was in these photography classes. And I'm like, oh, let's go around Brooklyn and do like an interesting architecture photo thing. So Yeah, I think creativity is something that people really have to remind themselves of.
Yeah,
sometimes.
it's too easy to get stuck in the slog of just going back to the basics of eat food, drink drinks, call it a day, and hope for the best. Watch content. So like the dinner in a movie, drinks in a movie, all of that. I just feel like it's such a waste of our time, because if you're meeting someone but you're not actually uncovering the important dimensions of compatibility, then why are you meeting them? Like, what are you hoping to glean about this person, and how much time are you prepared to waste before you actually find out the things that matter? And if you're not objectively, and let's assume you're going to go on at least 10 dates, probably more, before you find the right person for you, because it is to a certain extent a process of learning what your preferences are. You may not know how you want to be treated until you've met people who treated you like shit, and you're like, oh, well, I don't want that, and I don't want this otherwise. And some things you think you wanted maybe were only good once or twice, and then it got real old real quick. And so part of dating is just getting to know yourself in the process. But I think the most important thing the whole way through is having opportunities within any date to vary up the kinds of intimacies that you get to share and enjoy. Because if you're not pulling back the curtain a little bit and finding out what does it mean to bear myself to this person in a meaningful way that makes us both feel like we've gotten to know each other and that we've been acting out of a place of integrity and curiosity, then like I would consider most dates a failure if you don't incorporate that. Because what have you learned about this person? Like, I've gone on dates with people where it feels like we went on 5 first dates in a row, because at no point did we get any further on the emotional intimacy frontier.
Oh, yeah.
And like this person wasn't comfortable doing anything more than a drinks date. And so I'm like, okay, I guess we're going on another drinks date. And at that point, I'm just calculating like the cost of dating this person, and it's in the total volume of drinks that need to be consumed. So the cost to my body, the cost to my wallet of just going out and having drinks again, and having to like get there to a place that I don't even necessarily care for, because it's not even necessarily the vibe I want. Like very early in my dating career, I completely stopped anytime someone would even suggest a bar, I would say, okay, we're already not compatible, or at least like, hear me out. Here's what I think I'll be able to learn about you over the course of a bar date. And it's going to be, oh, I can't hear what you say, so I learn nothing because it's too loud here.
Yeah.
I always want to have many different vectors for intimacy. It's like, for me, touch is my love language. Like, I don't trust that I'm going to be touching someone with any meaningful regularity in a bar. It could be weird. But if we're doing a side-by-side walk and talk, we might be able to hold hands as we go. I've had people ask to hold hands within 5 minutes of a date. And already we're just starting from a point of like kindness and rapport, and we can keep talking throughout. We're not directly facing each other the way it frequently is at like a bar, or even in a cafe or a dinner date. It's really intimidating to stare at someone for hours straight, because every single thing you say, especially if you don't know compatibility up front, could be triggering for them, could be triggering for you, could trigger your own insecurities. If you get into a topic where you're not very confident in yourself, then like they're going to see that written over your face every fraction of a second that's like happening in real time. And so the constant eye contact can be very nerve-wracking for people, and it actually makes you less intimate, because you're now feeling like you either have to hide things, or you don't know what to share, or you feel uncomfortable. And so I like to just, in every date, vary up these types of intimacies we get to share, these types of intensities. So like sometimes I want to be able to have a moment, if we're going to have a long face-to-face for a meal, I want to be able to like turn back toward the world again and be side by side and see what it's like as partners in crime, partners in whatever. Like, let's go find a good picnic spot. Let's go on a little scavenger hunt that we devise ourselves that's based on things we care about. So like when you're walking through a park, what are the things you look for? Do you look for like what birds you can spot? Do you look for dogs you can pet? Do you look for people making out to see what kinds of ideas you can get? Like when you start identifying the things that someone looks for, the things they care about, then you share your own as well. And suddenly you've built a game for both of you to like get to see the world through each other's eyes. You can do so while together. You can do so holding hands. You can have a picnic blanket at the ready, so if you want to lay and cuddle, you can just pop that. Like, it can just become a part of your day-to-day. And so dating, I don't know, it hasn't felt for me like a slog or a pain. It's been just like a natural and earnest expression of who I am, where I'm at. All the topics I care to talk about, like, they're fair game over the course of a date, because once again, I'm not trying to learn whether this person has some baseline incompatibility right up front, because at this point, I've sourced people already based on compatibility. I'm not just like picking a rando on Tinder and going for a random, like, who the hell knows what's going to happen here. I have to pitch so many random things to hope that they might care about one of them. I'm going for a 99% match on OkCupid, who already has a 10-paragraph profile that matches with all the things I'm looking for. I know about their partners. I know about what the variables in their life look like that would be important for me to be aware of ahead of time. Yeah. I've acknowledged that in my message, and I've acknowledged that by virtue of the date I've proposed, because they've indicated things that they want to incorporate into their life. I've seen the overlaps with mine. I've pitched that as part of the date, as part of the first message.
In the last 15 minutes or so, I'm more curious what's been on the forefront of your mind lately.
There is the impending AI takeover of our day-to-day lives.
I think, so many people for so long have been saying that in sort of a hyperbolic way, but I've felt it the last year. I've had actual jobs, not by automation, but by AI. I shoot video, and now those video jobs are taken over by one engineer and 4 robotic cameras. Photo editing now has gotten so easy with the AI tools. They don't need photo editors as much as they used to. iPhones have, people think they can shoot and then they realize they forgot about recording audio. So sometimes people come back to me and be like, I still need you to shoot something.
At every level, it's really affecting us, because an AI can now learn to mimic your voice in under 1 minute of spoken text. So if you've ever spoken for more than a minute online and it's publicly available, someone can just lift your voice and have an AI now speak in your voice. They could also now speak in your voice in any language. And so you can have, there are apps, there are actual dating apps where I can start speaking, and in real time, the person on the other end will be hearing my voice in their language because of this AI, I guess, interconnection, whatever the AI is doing at that point. It can manipulate our photos to the point where it's impossible to tell which ones were made by AI or not. The New York Times in January just released a post that basically challenged you to come up with whether you believe it's an AI-generated photo or a real human. And I feel like the average failure rate is 90%. People are truly bad already at detecting that. We have AI for deepfakes, for deepfaked video. Mm-hmm. Obviously, with text has already been, gobbled up by AI. It's now embedded in many of our keyboards. I know with the latest Apple update, they now have an AI that can try, it guesses what you meant to say at even the whole sentence level, not even just a word change. We used to be it would be funny to tap the predictive text button on your phone and ask it, basically, if you just keep tapping it to guess what it thought you would say next. Yeah. Is no longer a predictive word. It's a predictive whole sentence.
Whole people now are being created with AI. You can be talking, it's someone that we kind of alluded to earlier, someone with a completely AI generated profile and photos as well. And that's what Chelsea and I, with her adult content, OnlyFans content, we try not to say OnlyFans so much anymore because we don't want to give them more recognition than they deserve, because they just are so greedy and their platform isn't that great. But with OnlyFans stuff, we advertise that it's actually us doing the messaging, her doing the messaging. I'll help assist her with filtering out bad actors and stuff like that. But it's actually her. And it just amazed me a couple months ago thinking about the fact that part of her image, her attractiveness, is knowing that it's not coming from AI. It's not, it blew me away. I don't know. How much of that stuff is actually a valid concern with adult content?
It's absolutely a concern, because there's several layers to that as well. So on one hand, other OnlyFans creators are making entirely artificial accounts of their own. So they'll train an AI to speak like them. They'll use the AI video manipulation so that it can be an avatar that looks like them and uses their voice when it speaks in a way that actually looks like them speaking. And so for all intents and purposes, this AI is now basically them and can engage essentially as them with fans, and can do it in real time, any time of day or night, because it's a computer. It's trained on your language, but it's not you, but it's also able to respond to your fans readily and anytime they want, and as many fans as message you. So it actually frees up a content creator to potentially scale up their business and scale up themselves well beyond anything they could ever hope to do on their own. The bigger question is, at what point does that AI get better at serving your fans than you, the person, would? Because you might get tired or annoyed, whereas the AI might just continuously generate content because that's what it's trained to do. Mm-hmm. And so it's actually, by one side of the coin, like, it could be kind of fun to try to compete with your own AI self to see who is actually better at being you for your fans. But then what happens when your fans like the AI you better than the real you? And what does that say for the future of content consumption?
That's a philosophy question. Jeez.
I mean, I've already noted that my sessions with my AI therapist are far more productive and satisfying than with my human therapist.
Wait, for real?
Yeah, because the AI therapist actually it not only responds more quickly, but it can say things, like it can internalize and offer a lot of different possible solutions to different things that I'll ask about, in a way that my human therapist might say something more along the lines of, well, how does that make you feel? And then it's like back to me again. Whereas the AI one might say, well, I'm trained in internal family systems, and I can say, based on this set of criteria from what you just said, that these proactive steps may be the next things you might want to try. And I can also then say to it, well, I would prefer only the first 3 steps, that you give me more information about those. And then straight away, boom, I get more information about the first 3 steps. And so I just feel like I can very quickly get to the heart of something in a way that like my human therapist might like want more information, different information. They might not be ready to give recommendations yet. So I feel a little bit more agency in that regard. And I'm not just like waiting for someone to try to internalize all the things about my life. I can just continue spewing it straight to the AI without having to even think. So I'm not saying it's yet better than in-person therapy. And I think there is something nice about having a person who actually cares about you, who will check in on you. But I mean, therapy itself has been undergoing a very significant change over the years, as it's been going more toward those like talk therapy, pay based on sessions. It doesn't matter which therapist shows up. It's just you get a person to talk to, and that's what matters.
I've had such problems trying to find a consistent therapist because I don't like telehealth. I can't do telehealth. It reminds me too much of the COVID lockdown. I get very triggered by it. But then you say AI therapy. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I've never really thought about using that as a resource. That feels different than having to go through like a telehealth thing.
I mean, I think one relevant variable that most people don't realize is already real and present and happening and has been happening for about a year, is that you can speak to the AI in your own voice. You're not typing, you're not texting, you're literally just talking, and it hears you. It can sometimes just transcribe what you've just said, so you can even see a record of what you've said, and then it will then provide you either a direct audio, like voice back in your ear with a response in its own like AI generated voice, whatever it is. You can probably even choose. Within a year, we'll be able to customize like the type of voice we want to hear that's like pleasing to us, so that we can feel more comfortable sharing. And it can give us a written readout of what it said and what it recommended. And so, I don't get that from my human therapist. I have no documentation of anything we talked about. I have no, it's just, I talk for an hour or 45 minutes, and then I get a couple questions of like, oh, how does that make you feel? Is there anything else you want to talk about? Like, that's all I'm getting from my human therapist right now. No follow-up, no feedback, no prescriptive actions of like what I could be doing that would help resolve some things. But at least with an AI, I'm getting a full text transcript of the contents of what we talked about. And I can potentially track that over time and have some other AI analyze it and find other fun things in it. So there's like a kind of a bright future in a sense, where we already have the tech to be better addressing our actual needs. And hopefully, as capitalism continues doing its, letting people try to develop products to fit the needs that we can address given the technology we have, hopefully that'll lead to better outcomes for us.
Yeah, I mean, like you said at the beginning of this, like just studying what Tinder has done over the last decade plus, and I guess we'll just have to watch how these tools are supposed to help people and make things more convenient or more things affordable. Having resources, therapy is expensive, but then someone else will manipulate these things to the worst of our means, the worst sides of our humanity, I guess.
I will say the AI therapy for me is like somewhere between $0 and $20 a month. whereas IRL therapy can be $200 to $500 an hour. So like it's a pretty insane drop off in price.
In real life, therapy is so difficult because you have to find a therapist that fits your needs, that doesn't have an agenda. Like, I dated a therapist who told me when she went to school, there were people in her program that said that they're secretly going to try to weasel in some Christian doctrine into their therapy to, kind of lead them towards Jesus Christ as your therapist, as your savior. So she knows that people have so you have to find someone with the right motives, and then their availability, the insurance, out-of-pocket cost, sliding scale. And then at the end of the day, it still might not work out for reasons beyond your own control. Again, I have a hard time trying to find a therapist that won't do telehealth now, because I have to have an in-person session. It's just, yeah. So the idea that, I can subcontract this to AI is actually a very convenient thought. A little bit off base from where I was trying to get at earlier with like content creation. Your brain works so fast. I'm always impressed, Steve Dean. All right. Thank you so much. Again, I am not Chelsea B, but this has been The Birds and the Bee with Matt and Steve Dean. Thank you.